This message did not find you by accident. It begins with a warning that carries weight, urgency, and divine timing, because Archangel Michael says don't ignore this. What you are about to hear is not ordinary insight, not emotional comfort, and not coincidence. It is a heavenly alert, released at a precise moment, meant for your ears and your heart alone. Somewhere beyond what human eyes can see, a revelation has just come out in heaven, one that directly involves your soulmate and the path of your future. And the reason this message sounds urgent is simple. If you dismiss it, if you scroll past it, if you tell yourself you'll come back later, the regret will not be small. You'll cry later, not because heaven was cruel, but because heaven tried to warn you in time. There are moments when the spiritual realm grows quiet, and there are moments when it moves with force. This is one of those moments. Archangel Michael does not whisper when protection, destiny, and truth are involved. He stands as a guardian, a warrior of clarity, and when he speaks, it is because something hidden can no longer remain hidden. A shocking secret about your soulmate has surfaced, something that changes how you understand the delays, the confusion, the silence, and even the heartbreak you may have endured. This secret was not revealed earlier because you were not ready to receive it. But now, heaven has determined that you are. You may feel a strange pull as you listen, a sense that something inside you is waking up. That is not fear. That is recognition. Your spirit already knows that this message carries answers you've been searching for, even if you didn't know how to ask the questions. The truth is, your soulmate connection was never just about romance or companionship. It was always tied to growth, timing, and divine order. And what has now been revealed in heaven explains why things unfolded the way they did, and why certain doors closed when you begged them to stay open. This is where many people misunderstand divine love. They think delay means denial, that silence means abandonment, or that pain means failure. But heaven operates on preparation, not haste. The shocking secret that has come out is not meant to hurt you. It is meant to protect you from repeating cycles that would have broken you later. Archangel Michael's warning comes now because the season ahead is sensitive. What you choose to do with this information will shape how smoothly, or how painfully, your next chapter unfolds. You might be wondering why the message feels so personal, as if it's speaking directly to your situation. That's because it is. Heaven does not broadcast randomly. Messages like this are released only when alignment is possible. Somewhere along your journey, you asked for truth. You asked for clarity. You asked for real love, not illusion. And now that truth is answering back. Ignoring it would not stop destiny, but it would delay peace. And that delay is where the tears come from. There is a reason the warning says, don't ignore this. Ignoring does not always look like disbelief. Sometimes it looks like distraction. Sometimes it looks like postponing obedience. Sometimes it looks like telling yourself you're tired of hoping. But Archangel Michael is stepping in precisely because hope is about to be redefined for you. The secret revealed in heaven exposes not only something about your soulmate, but something about your own readiness. It shows why you had to become who you are now before love could meet you without destroying you. As this message unfolds, understand this clearly. Nothing that is meant for you has been lost. And nothing true has been taken away. What felt like loss was often divine separation. What felt like rejection was often redirection. And what felt like waiting was actually protection. Archangel Michael stands at the intersection of truth and timing, and his presence here signals that a line has been drawn between the past and what comes next. This is not about creating fear. It is about preventing regret. Heaven would rather warn you now than comfort you later. And if your heart has been heavy, confused, or quietly hopeful despite disappointment, that is because your spirit sensed this moment approaching. The shocking secret about your soulmate did not come out in heaven to shame them or you. It came out to bring alignment, clarity, and correction where necessary. So as part 1 closes, let this settle into you. You are not late. You are not forgotten. And you are not foolish for believing in something deeper. This message is important because it marks a turning point. What you do with it matters. What you choose to ignore matters. And what you allow yourself to understand now will spare you unnecessary sorrow later. Archangel Michael's warning is not a threat. It is an act of mercy. And this is only the beginning. There is a reason this message reached you at this exact moment and not a day earlier or later. It is about timing. Divine timing that does not bend to human calendars or emotional impatience. You may think you clicked on this video out of curiosity, boredom, or coincidence, but heaven operates with precision. Archangel Michael does not deliver warnings randomly. When a message like this appears in your path, it is because alignment has already begun behind the scenes. Something has shifted in the spiritual realm, and now your awareness is being invited to catch up. You are hearing this now because the season you are entering cannot be navigated with old understanding. In the past, you may have tolerated confusion, accepted half answers, or stayed silent when your spirit felt uneasy. But the phase ahead demands clarity. The shocking secret about your soulmate that was revealed in heaven required your maturity, discernment, and emotional strength to fully grasp it. Had you heard this earlier, you might have misunderstood it, resisted it, or used it to cling to something that needed to be released. Now, you are ready to hear without panic and to listen without illusion. Think back over the recent days or weeks. Something likely felt different. Maybe you felt a pull toward reflection, or a sudden tiredness of repeating the same emotional story. Maybe you questioned patterns you once excused. These were not random moods. They were signs that your inner posture was shifting. Heaven responds when the heart becomes teachable. This is why the message found you now. Not because everything is perfect, but because you are finally in a position to choose wisely instead of react emotionally. Archangel Michael's involvement here is significant. He is associated with truth, protection, and decisive moments. His presence signals that something must be confronted honestly. The secret revealed in heaven is not meant to feed fantasy. It is meant to ground you in truth. And truth, even when loving, often arrives with weight. That weight you may feel in your chest right now is not fear. It is recognition. Your spirit knows that something important is unfolding, something that requires your attention, not your avoidance. Many people ask why they keep receiving spiritual messages but see no immediate change. The answer is simple but challenging. Messages prepare you before movement happens. Preparation is invisible, but it is essential. Heaven prepares the heart before it rearranges circumstances. This message is part of that preparation. It is aligning your perception so that when actions or revelations occur in your physical life, you are not blindsided, devastated, or misled. Ignoring preparation is how people end up saying, "I wish I had listened earlier." This is also why the message feels personal rather than generic. Generic words soothe for a moment. Personal truth transforms. The warning tone is not meant to scare you, it is meant to wake you. You are not being rushed, you are being positioned. The soulmate connection you care about is tied to lessons, growth, and divine order. And the secret that came out in heaven has everything to do with timing, readiness, and protection, not punishment. Now, let's be honest for a moment. If you have stayed this far, it is because something inside you is leaning in. That matters. Engagement is not just about watching, it is about agreement. When you like, comment, or subscribe, it is more than supporting a channel. It is a small act of alignment, a way of saying, I am open to truth, even when it challenges me. So if this message resonates, take a moment to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment. Not for visibility alone, but as a declaration that you are choosing awareness over avoidance. And if you know someone who has been confused, waiting, or hurting in silence, sharing this message could be the confirmation they have been praying for. Returning to the heart of this part, understand this. Divine timing often feels inconvenient to the ego but perfect to the soul. You may have wanted answers sooner. You may have begged for clarity in moments of loneliness. But answers given too early can become burdens instead of blessings. Now, the truth can land without crushing you. Now, it can guide instead of confuse. That is why this message found you now. There is also a protective element here. The secret revealed in heaven was not just about your soulmate's path. It was about shielding you from unnecessary pain. Awareness changes outcomes. When you see clearly, you choose differently. And when you choose differently, destiny unfolds with less resistance. This is why Archangel Michael intervenes at moments like this, not to control your choices, but to illuminate them. As part 2 comes to a close, take a breath and let this settle. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not foolish for believing in love with depth and purpose. This message arrived now because you are standing at the edge of a new understanding. What you do next will be informed, not blind. And that alone changes everything. What most people never realize is that some connections are not formed when two people meet, but long before they ever cross paths. This reveals something deeper than emotion, attraction, or timing. There is a hidden spiritual contract between you and your soulmate, and it was written before confusion ever entered the story. This contract was not about comfort alone. It was about growth, protection, and alignment. And this is why your journey has felt heavier than others, more complex, and at times painfully slow. You were not meant for a shallow connection. You were entrusted with something weighty, something sacred. This spiritual contract explains why certain people felt familiar the moment you met them, and why walking away felt like tearing something out of your chest. It explains why you sensed potential even when circumstances screamed otherwise. But here's the truth that changes everything. A spiritual contract does not mean instant union. It means divine process. Heaven never rushes what must be refined. The delays you experienced were not signs of rejection, but checkpoints of readiness. Both you and your soulmate were being shaped, corrected, and protected from meeting too soon and destroying what was meant to last. Archangel Michael's role in this contract is not symbolic. He stands as a guardian over divine assignments, especially those involving destiny and covenant. When confusion entered your connection, it was not because the contract failed. It was because free will collided with timing. One or both of you had lessons that could not be skipped. Patterns had to be confronted. Emotional immaturity had to be exposed. And in some cases, distance was the only mercy that could prevent permanent damage. You may have blamed yourself for what didn't work, replayed conversations, or wondered if you imagined the depth you felt. This is where many hearts break unnecessarily. A spiritual contract does not guarantee smoothness, it guarantees purpose. Pain does not mean the bond was false. Often, it means the bond was powerful enough to trigger everything unhealed. Heaven allows friction not to punish, but to purify. And what was revealed in heaven recently sheds light on why the separation, silence, or confusion was necessary for this stage. Here is the shocking part many are not prepared to hear. Your soulmate also struggled under the weight of this contract. While you were questioning, waiting, or hurting, they were facing internal battles of their own. Fear, pride, timing, or unresolved wounds interfered with their ability to show up fully. This does not excuse harm, but it explains delay. The contract demanded growth, and growth is rarely comfortable. Heaven did not reveal this earlier because knowing it too soon might have caused you to overextend, overweight, or tolerate what should have been corrected. What is being revealed now is not meant to pull you backward, but to release you forward. Understanding the contract allows you to stop personalizing what was never about your worth. It allows you to forgive without reopening wounds. It allows you to stand in clarity instead of confusion. Archangel Michael's presence here is a sign that the contract is being reviewed, adjusted, and protected. Some contracts evolve into union. Others evolve into release with honor. Either way, you are not losing. You are being aligned. There is also something important you must understand about yourself. You were chosen for this type of connection because of your depth. Not everyone can carry spiritual bonds without losing themselves. You were trained through disappointment to develop discernment. You were taught through silence to hear your own intuition. This contract was shaping you, not trapping you. And now that awareness has arrived, the weight you've been carrying can finally begin to lift. As this realization settles, you may feel a mix of relief and emotion. That is normal. Truth often brings tears before it brings peace. Let them come. This is not weakness. It is release. You are not starting over. You are starting clearer. And clarity changes everything that follows. Hold on. What comes next changes everything, because what heaven is doing now is not just explaining the past, but preparing you for what happens next. Before moving forward, receive this moment as a blessing, not a burden. If this resonates deeply with you, type "I am chosen" in the comments as an act of agreement. Blessing code 639 is now activated over your heart, your discernment, and your future connections. As this truth settles into your spirit, I want to speak directly to those who feel the weight of this calling. I hear the Lord saying that when you sow into this work, you are lighting lamps for souls who are still walking in confusion. This channel is not entertainment. It is a field, and every seed releases clarity, healing, and direction in someone else's life. I am the Lord who gives seed to the sower, and today He is speaking that promise personally to you. I feel led to say this clearly. I invite you to act now, not later. Your super thanks, your membership, or your PayPal gift becomes a prophetic response, not a donation. The PayPal link is in the description, and the QR code may be flashing before you. This is your moment of obedience. I speak blessing over every giver. May open heavens follow your yes. Do it now, and let your seed speak where your voice cannot. What was revealed in heaven was not small, and it was not symbolic. It was specific, weighty, and deeply connected to the confusion you have lived with for far too long. This shocking secret about your soulmate is the kind of truth heaven withholds until the exact moment it can bring clarity instead of chaos. And now that moment has arrived. The revelation is this: the delay in your connection was not caused by lack of love, but by a misalignment between readiness and responsibility. Heaven exposed something that could no longer remain hidden. Your soulmate was not prepared to carry what the connection demanded at the time you were ready to give it. This is difficult for many hearts to accept because we often assume that deep feelings equal deep readiness. But heaven sees differently. Love can be present while maturity is still forming. Desire can exist while discipline is missing. The secret revealed was that your soulmate carried unresolved inner conflicts that made union premature, not impossible. These conflicts were not always visible on the surface. To you, they may have appeared confident, capable, or emotionally present in moments. But beneath that surface, there were fractures that would have turned intimacy into damage if things had progressed too quickly. Heaven does not expose secrets to shame, it exposes them to protect. Archangel Michael's involvement in this revelation signals that intervention was necessary. If the truth had remained hidden, you would have continued questioning your worth, overextending your patience, or blaming yourself for delays that were never yours to fix. The revelation shifts the burden off your shoulders and places responsibility where it belongs. You were not asking for too much. You were simply early. This is where many people feel a sudden wave of emotion, relief mixed with grief. Relief because the confusion finally makes sense. Grief because you realize how much emotional weight you carried unnecessarily. Heaven saw this and responded. The shocking secret is not that your soulmate failed, but that heaven delayed on purpose to prevent a deeper wound. Some unions collapse not because love is false, but because timing is ignored. Heaven refused to let that happen to you. Another layer of this revelation is even more sobering. The delay was not only about your soulmate's readiness, but about your protection from repeating cycles. Had the connection solidified too soon, it would have mirrored past dynamics you worked hard to outgrow. The old version of you might have stayed too long, compromised too deeply, or accepted imbalance as sacrifice. Heaven waited until you developed discernment strong enough to recognize truth without romanticizing it. That is growth, not loss. This secret also explains why communication may have felt inconsistent, why actions did not always match words, or why progress stalled just when things seemed promising. These were not mixed signals meant to toy with your emotions. They were indicators of internal struggle. Heaven allowed you to see just enough to keep you from attaching blindly, but not enough to fully understand. Until now. Now, understanding has arrived because your heart is stable enough to receive it. It is important to say this clearly. This revelation does not condemn your soulmate. It reveals their humanity. Everyone on a divine path faces moments where growth lags behind calling. What matters is not the delay itself, but what is done with it. Heaven revealing this secret now means something has shifted. Either growth has occurred, or a decision has been reached. In both cases, uncertainty is being removed. Ambiguity was the real enemy of your peace. There is also a personal invitation hidden within this revelation. Heaven is asking you to release the need to rescue, wait excessively, or reinterpret red flags as tests of loyalty. Divine love does not require self-abandonment. The truth revealed in heaven restores balance. It reminds you that love should meet you where you are, not keep you suspended in hope without action. This understanding does not harden your heart. It strengthens your boundaries. As this part unfolds, you may notice a shift in how you feel toward the past. The emotional charge begins to soften. Questions lose their grip. That is not detachment. It is healing. When truth replaces fantasy, peace follows naturally. Archangel Michael's role here is to cut through illusion, not connection. Whatever remains after truth is revealed is what is real. And what is real does not require constant explanation or emotional strain. The shocking secret revealed in heaven ultimately serves one purpose: alignment. Alignment between truth and timing. Alignment between desire and readiness. Alignment between what you give and what you receive. Whether this leads to reunion, transformation, or release, one thing is certain: you will no longer walk forward confused. Heaven has made sure of that. As Part 4 closes, let this truth settle without rushing to conclusions. Revelation is not meant to force immediate decisions. It is meant to restore inner balance. You are not losing love. You are gaining clarity. And clarity is the foundation of peace, whatever form the next chapter takes. What you experienced was never just emotional. It was spiritual, subtle, and largely unseen. This pulls back the veil on the silent battle that surrounded your connection, a battle you could feel but could never fully explain. This was not chaos without cause. It was resistance meeting destiny. Whenever a connection carries purpose, opposition does not arrive loudly. It arrives quietly, through confusion, fatigue, miscommunication, and emotional heaviness. That is why the struggle felt internal rather than external. The battlefield was not around you. It was within the space between you and your soulmate. This silent battle explains why moments of clarity were often followed by sudden distance. Why peace never fully settled even when things seemed calm. Why your intuition kept whispering that something deeper was happening beneath the surface. You were not imagining it. Spiritual resistance rarely announces itself. It works by distorting perception, draining patience, and amplifying doubt. Its goal is not always to destroy a connection outright, but to exhaust the people involved until they give up on what they were meant to protect. Archangel Michael's presence in this story is critical because he is not only a messenger, he is a defender. His sword represents separation between truth and illusion. During this silent battle, much of what you felt conflicted about was illusion masquerading as logic. You questioned yourself when you should have trusted your discernment. You minimized red flags to preserve hope. You carried emotional weight that was not yours. These were not personal failures. They were symptoms of prolonged spiritual pressure. One of the most painful effects of this battle was self-doubt. You began to wonder if you were too sensitive, too intense, or asking for too much. Resistance thrives when a person turns inward against themselves. But heaven saw what you could not fully see at the time. Your standards were not the problem. Your depth was not the problem. The battle was attempting to convince you to shrink so that imbalance could feel normal. That is why Archangel Michael steps in, to stop erosion of identity. This resistance also targeted timing. Every time alignment approached, something interrupted it. A misunderstanding, a delay, an emotional withdrawal. These interruptions were not coincidences. They were pressure points. The enemy of clarity knows that if enough time passes in confusion, people begin to detach from their own truth just to find relief. Heaven allowed the battle only up to the point where it could refine you without breaking you. Beyond that point, intervention was necessary. You may now realize that certain moments felt heavier than they should have. Conversations drained you. Silence lingered longer than expected. Even hope became tiring. These were signs that the battle was intensifying, not because you were weak, but because the connection mattered. Resistance does not waste energy on what has no future. It focuses on what carries potential to shift lives, hearts, and trajectories. Another layer of this silent battle involved protection through distance. Sometimes heaven creates space not to punish but to shield. Shield you from absorbing emotional instability. Shield you from compromising your values. Shield you from forming trauma bonds instead of healthy attachment. Distance was not abandonment. It was containment. It kept the battle from turning into destruction. This is why you often felt torn between holding on and letting go. Your spirit sensed both the value of the connection and the danger of forcing it. That inner conflict was not indecision. It was discernment under pressure. Archangel Michael's role was to strengthen that discernment until truth could be revealed without harm. And now that revelation has come, the battle loses its power because exposure breaks influence. It is important to understand that not every struggle means you were meant to fight longer. Some battles are signals to pause, not push. The silent battle around your connection was never asking you to endure endlessly. It was preparing you to recognize when endurance turns into self-neglect. Heaven values your peace as much as your purpose. As this understanding settles, you may feel compassion for your past self. You did the best you could with what you knew. You stayed open-hearted in a season that demanded strength. That is not foolishness. That is courage. And now, courage is being rewarded with clarity. The silent battle is not ongoing in the same way anymore. Once truth is revealed, resistance loses access. You are no longer fighting in the dark. Whether the path ahead involves reconciliation or release, it will no longer be fueled by confusion. Archangel Michael's intervention marks the end of hidden warfare and the beginning of conscious choice. As Part 5 closes, receive this assurance. You were never weak for feeling deeply, and you were never wrong for hoping sincerely. The battle did not define you, it refined you. And now that refinement is complete enough for the next phase to unfold with greater peace, strength, and self-trust. There were signs placed along your path long before clarity arrived, but at the time, they felt confusing, subtle, or easy to dismiss. It is not about regret for what you missed. It is about understanding what was happening beneath the surface while you were simply trying to survive emotionally. Heaven often speaks in patterns before it speaks in explanations. The signs you encountered were not meant to give you the full picture. They were meant to keep you alert, protected, and inwardly guided until the right moment for revelation. Think back carefully. There were moments when something didn't sit right, even when everything looked fine on the outside. A pause in your spirit. A hesitation you couldn't explain. A feeling that the timing was off, even when your heart wanted to move forward. These were not fears or insecurities. They were signals. But because you were emotionally invested, you interpreted them as doubts instead of discernment. Heaven understood this and did not condemn you for it. Some signs came through repetition. The same emotional lesson appearing with different faces. The same conflict resurfacing in new conversations. The same sense of waiting without progress. Repetition is one of heaven's quiet languages. It is not punishment. It is emphasis. When a lesson repeats, it is not because you failed to learn it. It is because the lesson was preparing you for something larger. Each repetition was strengthening your ability to recognize truth without needing proof from others. Other signs came through interruption. Plans falling through unexpectedly. Conversations ending abruptly. Opportunities dissolving just as they seemed secure. These interruptions were not accidents. They were containment. Heaven was preventing momentum that would have locked you into a situation your future self would struggle to escape. At the time, interruption felt like loss. Now, it can be recognized as protection. You may also recall signs that came through your inner world. Dreams that felt symbolic. Strong emotions that surfaced without clear cause. A sense of heaviness followed by unexplained calm. These internal signals were not random. They were your spirit responding to movements you could not consciously see. When the soul perceives misalignment, it reacts before the mind understands. That reaction was not weakness. It was wisdom forming. One of the hardest signs to understand was silence. Silence from your soulmate. Silence in progress. Silence where answers should have been. Silence is often misunderstood as absence, but in divine timing, silence is sometimes restraint. Heaven withholds clarity when clarity would cause you to act prematurely. You were spared information not because you were unworthy of truth, but because truth would have led you to intervene in ways that disrupted necessary growth, yours or theirs. There were also signs that appeared as emotional fatigue, feeling tired of explaining yourself, tired of waiting for consistency, tired of holding space without reciprocity. Fatigue is not always burnout. Sometimes it is your spirit signaling that a season is ending. You did not fail by feeling tired. You listened when your soul asked for rest, even if you didn't yet understand what rest would lead to. You might wonder now why these signs were not clear. Why heaven didn't simply say, stop, or wait, or not yet. The answer is gentle but important. Obedience born from fear is not alignment. Heaven desires willing clarity, not forced compliance. You were allowed to choose, to feel, to hope, and even to struggle, so that when truth arrived, it would be received with maturity rather than resistance. Another sign many overlook is the way peace behaved. It never fully settled, but it never fully left either. It hovered. That hovering peace was a boundary. It prevented emotional collapse while also preventing emotional complacency. It kept you functional without letting you become comfortable in misalignment. That balance is not accidental. It is divine calibration. Now, with the revelations you have received, these signs begin to arrange themselves into a coherent story. What once felt like mixed signals now feels like layered guidance. What once felt like delay now feels like design. This understanding does not write the past, but it redeems it. It gives meaning to moments you once wish away. As Part 6 comes to a close, release any self-judgment you still carry. You were never meant to understand everything in real time. You were meant to stay open, responsive, and honest with yourself, and you did. The signs did their job. They kept you from harm, shaped your discernment, and led you here, to a place where understanding can finally settle without confusion. What you are gaining now is not just clarity about a connection, but trust in yourself. And that trust will guide you far more accurately than any external sign ever could. There is a precise moment in every spiritually guided journey when everything quietly changes. Not because circumstances suddenly explode into action, but because the inner posture shifts. This message speaks to that moment. This is the turning point that changes your love timeline, and it does not arrive with noise, drama, or urgency. It arrives with clarity, a calm, grounded clarity that settles into your spirit and rearranges your future without asking for permission. This is the moment when waiting stops feeling like suffering and starts feeling like preparation completed. For a long time, your love timeline felt suspended. You were moving forward in life, yet emotionally paused, as if something unfinished kept tugging at you. Time passed, but resolution did arrive. This wasn't stagnation. It was incubation. Heaven was allowing layers within you to mature before releasing movement. When hearts move faster than wisdom, damage follows. The turning point only arrives when your emotional reactions are no longer steering the journey. You are reaching that place now, whether you fully realize it or not. This turning point begins internally. You stop chasing explanations that never satisfied you anyway. You stop interpreting silence as something you must fix. You stop confusing intensity with intimacy. Instead, you begin valuing peace as much as passion. That shift alone alters your entire love timeline. What once felt urgent now feels optional. What once felt unbearable now feels manageable. This is not emotional withdrawal. It is emotional sovereignty. You are reclaiming control over what you allow to influence your inner world. One of the clearest signs of this turning point is how patience transforms. Earlier, patience looked like endurance. You endured uncertainty, inconsistency, and emotional strain because you believed waiting was proof of love. But now patience looks different. It looks like self-respect. It looks like letting things unfold without chasing clarity or forcing outcomes. This refined patience signals readiness. Heaven responds when patience is no longer fueled by fear of loss, but by confidence and alignment. Another shift happens in how you relate to desire. You still desire love, connection, and partnership, but you want it clean now. You want it without confusion, without emotional imbalance, without constantly questioning your worth or the other person's intentions. This desire is not demanding. It is discerning. And discernment changes timelines because it changes what you are willing to engage with. You no longer settle for potential. You look for presence, consistency, and truth. At this turning point, boundaries solidify naturally. Not as walls but as filters. You become selective without being closed. You remain open without being vulnerable to misuse. This balance is critical. It allows love to approach you without threatening your peace. And when peace becomes non-negotiable, only aligned connections can move forward. Everything else falls away without resistance. You may also notice a change in how you remember the past. The emotional charge softens. You can think about what happened without spiraling into regret or longing. You no longer romanticize confusion or minimize pain. This neutrality is not indifference. It is closure forming from understanding, not explanation. Closure does not always come from conversation. Sometimes it comes from inner clarity, and that clarity is now anchoring itself within you. This turning point also affects how you interpret signs. You stop searching for meaning in every small interaction. You stop asking the universe for reassurance every time doubt surfaces. Instead, you trust what feels stable and withdraw from what feels draining. This trust in yourself is one of the most powerful timeline shifters there is. When self-trust replaces external validation, movement accelerates naturally. Spiritually, this moment is significant. Heaven responds to inner alignment faster than outward effort. When your inner world stabilizes, external circumstances begin to reorganize with less resistance. That is why changes may soon feel effortless. Conversations become clear. Decisions finalize without pressure. Opportunities arise without emotional strain. This is not coincidence. It is alignment catching up to awareness. It is important to understand that this turning point does not guarantee a specific outcome with a specific person. What it guarantees is freedom from repetition. You will not relive the same emotional cycle in a different form. The timeline has changed because you have changed. You are no longer operating from unresolved wounds or unspoken fears. You are moving from clarity, not hope alone. This is also where surrender replaces control. Earlier, control may have felt like safety. Now, surrender feels safer. You are no longer trying to manage outcomes or anticipate emotional risks. You allow truth to reveal itself. And truth, when allowed space, always simplifies decisions. This surrender does not make you passive. It makes you responsive instead of reactive. As Part 7 comes to a close, receive this truth fully. The turning point is not something that happens to you. It happens through you. Your awareness has shifted the trajectory. Your boundaries have recalibrated the timeline. Your willingness to choose peace over confusion has unlocked movement that was previously delayed. Whatever unfolds next will meet you differently because you are no longer the same person who began this journey. And that is the quiet miracle of this moment. The love timeline has changed, not because you forced it, but because you became ready to walk it with clarity, strength, and self-trust. There are moments when heaven does not force, threaten, or intervene dramatically. Instead, it warns. It carries that weight. What happens if you ignore this message is not framed as punishment, but as consequence, not imposed by heaven, but created by delay. Ignoring truth does not stop destiny, but it does make the path heavier. And this is why Archangel Michael's warning is so clear right now. You are being shown something before it costs you unnecessary tears. Ignoring this message does not mean disbelief alone. It can look subtle. It can look like postponing reflection. It can look like saying, "I'll deal with this later," or distracting yourself back into familiar emotional patterns. When truth arrives and is ignored, confusion quietly regains authority. Old habits return. Emotional loops restart. You may find yourself repeating the same conversations internally, asking the same questions, and feeling the same ache, only deeper, because part of you knows you were already shown the way out. The greatest cost of ignoring this message is not loss of love, but loss of clarity. When clarity is postponed, the heart fills the gap with assumption. Assumption leads to misinterpretation. Misinterpretation leads to emotional decisions that feel justified in the moment but painful later. This is where regret is born, not from bad intentions but from delayed obedience to insight. Heaven is trying to spare you that regret. Another consequence of ignoring this message is emotional exhaustion. Without clarity, you keep investing energy where alignment is uncertain. You keep explaining yourself to people who are not listening. You keep hoping situations will resolve themselves without honest evaluation. Over time, this drains your joy, your patience, and eventually your trust in yourself. The warning is not dramatic because the damage is quiet. It accumulates slowly until one day you realize how tired you are of carrying questions that already had answers. Ignoring this message also delays healing. Healing requires acknowledgement. When truth is avoided, wounds remain active beneath the surface. They may not hurt constantly, but they influence choices, reactions, and expectations. You might become guarded where openness is needed, or overly accommodating where boundaries are required. The longer clarity is postponed, the longer these patterns shape your future connections. There is also a spiritual consequence that is often misunderstood. Heaven does not withdraw support when messages are ignored, but it does allow you to learn through experience instead of insight. Learning through experience is slower and more painful. Learning through insight is gentler and more direct. This message is insight. Ignoring it does not mean heaven abandons you. It means you choose the longer road. You may think ignoring this message preserves hope. In reality, it preserves uncertainty. True hope is rooted in truth, not fantasy. When hope is disconnected from clarity, it becomes a source of anxiety rather than strength. Heaven is offering you a version of hope that is steady, grounded, and sustainable. Ignoring it keeps you tied to emotional highs and lows that feel intense, but lead nowhere. Archangel Michael's warning comes from protection, not fear. He sees what happens when people stay too long in situations that require decision. He sees how hesitation becomes attachment, and attachment becomes regret. This message is meant to interrupt a trajectory. It is a pause before paying, a light before a fall that does not need to happen. If you ignore this message, you may find yourself revisiting it later, after disappointment, after another delay, after tears you did not need to shed. That is why the warning says, you'll cry later. Not because heaven desires your pain, but because heaven understands human nature. We often recognize truth more clearly after consequences. This message is an invitation to recognize it before. Hold on. What comes next will change how you see your future, because the warning is not the end of the message. It is the doorway into empowerment, choice, and peace. Before moving forward, receive this moment as sacred. If this resonates with you, type "I choose clarity" in the comments as an act of alignment. Blessing code 842 is now activated, releasing discernment, courage, and emotional protection over your path. As this warning settles into your heart, I feel led to speak to those who sense that this message is bigger than them. When you give into this work, you are helping light reach people who are still standing at the edge of confusion. The Lord is saying, "What you place in my hands, I multiply for impact." I am personally inviting you right now to respond, not later, as an act of obedience. Your super thanks, membership, or PayPal seed becomes a prophetic answer to someone else's prayer. The PayPal link is in the description, and the QR code may be on your screen. This is your moment. I speak blessing over every giver. May clarity, peace, and increase meet you where you are. Act now, and let heaven respond to your yes. There comes a point where awareness must turn into action. This is not about pressure or fear. It is about response. What you must do right now is less dramatic than you might expect, but far more powerful. Heaven is not asking you to chase, confront, or force clarity from anyone else. The instruction is inward before it is outward. The next step is a posture, not a move. And if you take it seriously, it will realign everything that has felt uncertain. The first thing you must do is choose honesty over emotional habit. Emotional habits form when we repeat responses because they feel familiar, even if they no longer serve us. You may be used to waiting without clarity, hoping without confirmation, or explaining away discomfort to preserve possibility. Right now, you are being asked to pause that pattern. To judge it, but to step out of it. Honesty begins by admitting what no longer feels aligned, even if part of you still wants it to work. Next, you must release urgency. Urgency often disguises itself as passion, but spiritually, urgency is usually rooted in fear. Fear of loss, fear of being alone, fear of starting over. Heaven does not operate through urgency. It operates through timing. When you release urgency, you stop trying to control outcomes and start allowing truth to surface naturally. This does not slow things down. It removes resistance. What is meant to move will move faster when it is not being forced. Another critical step is to stop negotiating your boundaries internally. You may not be crossing boundaries outwardly, but inside, you may still be rationalizing behavior, silence, or inconsistency that you know does not feel right. This internal negotiation keeps you emotionally tethered even when nothing is happening externally. Right now, you are being asked to let your boundaries become settled, not situational. Boundaries are not ultimatums. They are expressions of self-respect. You must also shift from interpretation to observation. Interpretation fills gaps with assumption. Observation allows facts to speak for themselves. Notice what is consistent. Notice what requires effort to justify. Notice how you feel after interactions, not just during them. This shift removes emotional fog and restores discernment. Truth does not need interpretation to be recognized. It becomes obvious when you stop explaining it away. Trusting divine timing is another essential step, but trust does not mean passivity. It means cooperation. Cooperation looks like staying emotionally available without being emotionally dependent. It looks like openness without overinvestment. It looks like faith without fantasy. Trusting timing means you no longer measure progress by intensity, but by stability. Stability is a sign of alignment. Intensity without stability is often a warning, not a promise. There is also a call here to simplify. Complexity often masks misalignment. When something is right, it does not require constant analysis. Right now, simplify your emotional focus. Ask yourself one grounded question. Does this bring peace or confusion? That answer matters more than potential, history, or hope. Peace does not mean boredom. It means safety for your spirit. And safety is required for love to grow in a healthy way. At this stage, action may also mean stepping back, not in bitterness, not in silence as punishment, but in clarity. Stepping back creates space for truth to rise. It removes pressure from both sides and allows authenticity to surface. If something is real, space will not destroy it. If something relies on pressure to exist, space will reveal that quickly. This is not withdrawal, it is wisdom. Now, hear this clearly. You are not being asked to decide the final outcome today. You are being asked to decide how you show up. Will you show up grounded or anxious? Clear or confused? Open or self-abandoning? How you show up now determines what can meet you next. Heaven responds to posture before it responds to requests. This is also the moment to align outwardly with what resonates inwardly. If this message hath been speaking to you, engaging with it is not meaningless. When you like this video, subscribe to the channel, or leave a comment, you are not just supporting content, you are signaling agreement with clarity. It is a small but intentional act of alignment. And if you know someone who is caught in emotional confusion, sharing this message could be the very nudge that helps them choose peace over pain. Hold this with you as you move forward. Clarity is not cold, and boundaries are not rejection. They are invitations for truth to stand up and be seen. You are not closing your heart. You are protecting it so that what enters can stay without harming you. Stay with this, because what comes next brings reassurance about what heaven is actively doing on your behalf, and understanding that will steady your heart in ways you may not expect. There is a reassurance you need to receive now, and this message exists to deliver it clearly and calmly. While much of what you have heard has focused on understanding, responsibility, and choice, this part reveals what is happening beyond your effort. You are not navigating this season alone. Archangel Michael is actively guarding what is meant for you, not passively observing, not waiting for you to get everything right, but intervening in ways that preserve your future peace. His protection does not always feel dramatic, but it is precise. When Archangel Michael guards a union, he does not interfere with free will, but he does limit damage. He restricts access to what could derail destiny permanently. This is why certain paths never fully opened, even when you tried to force them. This is why moments that could have bonded you through trauma instead dissolved before they took root. What felt like missed opportunities were often divine interruptions designed to protect you from attachments that would have cost you far more later. One of the clearest ways this protection has shown up is through restraint. You may have wanted answers, closure, or forward motion, yet something always slowed the process. That slowing was not resistance. It was containment. Archangel Michael restrains momentum when momentum would carry you into imbalance. He allows movement only when stability can sustain it. That is why progress often paused just before emotional overinvestment could turn into self-abandonment. Another way this guarding has occurred is through exposure. Truth surfaced gradually, not all at once, because sudden exposure would have overwhelmed you. Instead, pieces were revealed over time, allowing your discernment to strengthen alongside the information. This is strategic protection. When truth arrives faster than the heart can process it, it can cause collapse instead of clarity. Heaven paced revelation to match your growth. You may also notice that despite confusion, something always kept you from fully losing yourself. You may have felt disappointed, but not destroyed. Hurt but not hollow. This resilience is not accidental. Archangel Michael's protection often looks like internal stability. Even when circumstances are uncertain, your core remains intact. That is the mark of divine guarding. You are allowed to feel, but not to fracture. This protection also extends to the other side of the connection. If reunion, restoration, or alignment is part of the future, guarding is necessary on both ends. Archangel Michael does not favor one heart over another. He preserves the integrity of the connection itself. That sometimes means allowing distance until growth catches up with calling. It sometimes means blocking premature access until accountability is possible. Protection is not indulgence. It is discipline applied with purpose. It is important to understand that guarding does not mean delaying forever. It means delaying until damage is no longer inevitable. Heaven is not interested in dramatic love stories that end in emotional ruin. It is interested in unions that can stand without constant repair. If something is being protected, it is because it is valuable. Fragile things are guarded closely until they are strong enough to endure exposure. You may have wondered why other people seemed to move ahead while you waited. Why their relationships appeared easier, faster, or more straightforward. The answer is not comparison. It is calling. What you are carrying requires a different level of preparation. Archangel Michael guards assignments that carry weight, not convenience. Your journey has been slower because it has been intentional. This guarding also includes removing what does not belong. Some connections faded quietly. Some opportunities dissolved without explanation. Some conversations never happened. These were not losses. They were extractions. Anything that would have competed with or contaminated what is meant for you had to be cleared. Protection often looks like subtraction before addition. There is also a future-focused aspect to this guarding. What is being preserved is not just a relationship, but your capacity to trust again without fear. Archangel Michael is not only guarding a union, he is guarding your heart's ability to remain open without being naive. That balance is rare, and it is worth protecting. As this part settles, allow yourself to release the belief that you must manage everything. You are not responsible for holding the entire outcome together. Your responsibility is honesty, clarity, and self-respect. The guarding is not your job. That work is already being done. Part 10 closes with this assurance. Nothing meant for you is unprotected. Nothing true is vulnerable to confusion forever. What is real is being preserved, refined, and timed with intention. You are not waiting alone. You are being guarded. And that protection is active, deliberate, and aligned with a future that will not require you to lose yourself to keep it. There is a moment that often comes just before alignment, and many people misunderstand it. This part speaks to that moment, the emotional release that happens before divine reunion, restoration, or redirection fully takes form. This release is not a setback. It is not regression. It is not a sign that something has gone wrong. It is a necessary clearing, a final softening of the heart that allows what comes next to arrive without resistance or fear. You may already be feeling it, a sudden wave of emotion that seems to come out of nowhere, tears that surface without a clear trigger, a quiet sadness mixed with relief. This is not grief for what you lost, it is the release of what you no longer need to carry. When the soul prepares to receive something aligned, it lets go of stored tension, unspoken disappointment, and unresolved hope. The body often responds before the mind can explain it. This emotional release happens because your nervous system has been in a state of alert for a long time. Waiting, questioning, and hoping all require energy. Even faith, when stretched over long seasons of uncertainty, creates emotional fatigue. Heaven understands this. Before peace can settle fully, the weight must be acknowledged and released. That is why this moment feels tender. You are not breaking down. You are emptying out what cannot go forward with you. Many people expect divine movement to feel exciting first, but often it feels quiet. It feels like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. It feels like saying goodbye to an old version of yourself who survived on endurance alone. A version of you did what it needed to do. It protected you. It kept you hopeful. But it is no longer required. Emotional release marks the transition from survival to stability. You may notice that memories surface during this time, not to pull you backward, but to be neutralized. When memories no longer carry emotional charge, they lose power. This is how healing completes itself. You remember without reliving. You acknowledge without reopening. This is the difference between processing and being stuck. Heaven allows memory to rise only when it can no longer harm you. This release also creates space for forgiveness, not forced forgiveness, but natural forgiveness that comes from understanding. You stop needing apologies that may never come. You stop replaying conversations you wish had gone differently. Not because it didn't matter, but because it no longer controls you. Forgiveness at this stage is not a gift to someone else. It is a sign that your heart is light enough to move forward freely. If divine reunion is part of your path, this release is essential. Reunions that happen without emotional clearing often rebuild old patterns. Heaven will not allow a new chapter to be written with old wounds bleeding into it. The release cleans the page. It ensures that if paths cross again, they do so from truth, not trauma. And if the path leads elsewhere, the release ensures you walk forward without bitterness or fear. There is also a spiritual safety in this moment. Emotional release lowers defenses that were built out of necessity, not desire. It allows softness without vulnerability to harm. This is a refined openness. You are not exposing yourself to pain. You are opening yourself to alignment. The difference matters. You might wonder why this release feels intense even though clarity has arrived. Clarity answers questions, but it does not immediately soothe the nervous system. The body needs time to adjust to safety after long periods of uncertainty. Tears are part of that adjustment. They signal that the threat has passed, that waiting is no longer required in the same way. That is why after the release, many people describe feeling lighter, calmer, and unexpectedly peaceful. Do not rush this process. Do not analyze it away. Let it move through you naturally. Emotional release is not something to fix. It is something to allow. The more you allow it, the faster it completes its work. Resistance prolongs it. Acceptance completes it. As part 11 draws to a close, understand this clearly. You are not losing anything in this release. You are making room. You are not saying goodbye to love. You are saying goodbye to confusion, self-doubt, and emotional strain. What remains after this release is what is real, stable, and ready to meet you without causing harm. What comes next will not require you to brace yourself. It will meet you where you are, open, grounded, and at peace. And that is how you will know that this emotional release was not an ending, but a preparation for something that no longer needs to hurt to exist. This is where everything comes together. This is not about new warnings or new revelations. It is about assurance. It is the gentle but powerful closing of a cycle that demanded much from your heart. What you have walked through was not confusion without purpose, and it was not delay without meaning. Heaven has been guiding you carefully, even when you could not see the full path. And now, the message settles into divine comfort, because fear is no longer required where clarity has arrived. Receive this first truth deeply. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not disqualified from love, peace, or fulfillment. The timeline you walked was custom-fit for your growth, not compared to anyone else's pace. Heaven does not rush souls it intends to establish. What felt slow was sacred. What felt heavy was shaping endurance, discernment, and emotional wisdom that will now serve you instead of burden you. Everything you were shown was meant to restore trust. Trust in God, trust in timing, and trust in yourself. Self-trust may be the greatest gift released in this season. You no longer need external reassurance to validate what your spirit already knows. You have learned the difference between hope that drains and hope that steadies. You have learned how peace feels in your body, and that awareness will guard you long after this message ends. There is also comfort in knowing that nothing was wasted. Not the tears, not the waiting, not the questions. Heaven recycles nothing in vain. What you endured sharpened your ability to love without losing yourself. That balance is rare. Many people either close their hearts or give them away too freely. You learned how to stay open and discerning at the same time. That is spiritual maturity. As this journey closes, understand that assurance does not mean certainty about every detail. It means confidence in direction. You may not know exactly how the next chapter unfolds, but you know how it will feel: grounded, clear, and peaceful. That knowing is enough. When peace leads, fear cannot dominate decisions. When clarity leads, confusion cannot control outcomes. Archangel Michael's presence throughout this message was never about pressure. It was about protection. Protection of your heart, your future, and your ability to love again without suspicion or self-betrayal. You were never being tested to see how much pain you could endure. You were being trained to recognize what no longer deserves access to you. That training is now complete enough for a new season to begin. Let go of the need to monitor outcomes. Let go of the urge to look back for confirmation. What is meant for you will not require chasing, guessing, or shrinking. It will meet you where you stand now, clear, honest, and whole. Divine love does not arrive with anxiety. It arrives with recognition and rest. As this final part settles, allow gratitude to rise, not for the pain itself, but for the wisdom it produced. Gratitude closes doors gently. It releases the past without bitterness. It invites the future without fear. This is the posture that allows blessings to land softly instead of colliding with resistance. Before we close, receive this final blessing. If this message has resonated with your spirit, type "I walk in peace" in the comments as a declaration. Blessing code 914 is now activated, releasing emotional rest, divine alignment, and protection over your heart and future. As we close this message, I want to speak to those who feel the weight of its purpose. This work is not just content. It is a river carrying light to souls who are tired of confusion. The Lord is saying, "What you release into my work, I release back into your life, pressed down and overflowing." I am speaking to you personally now. Act. Your super thanks, your membership, or your PayPal seed is a prophetic step, not a transaction. The PayPal link is in the description, and the QR code may be on your screen. This is your moment to respond. I speak blessing over every giver. May peace guard your heart, and clarity mark your path. Do it now, and let your obedience echo into lives you may never meet. You are covered. You are guided. And you are stepping forward, not in fear, but in peace.